Hello everyone and welcome to this video on Power Query and Power BI. In this video we're going to revisit a really interesting scenario that was posted about almost 3 years ago by Matt Mason, and this is basically a technique on how you can iterate over an unknown number of pages in Power Query. Now in this case, the idea or the scenario was that Matt wanted to actually get data from the box office mojo. And in this case, for example, we could actually query the data based on this URL and one of the parameters that this URL had. So for example, I'm actually on the page 50, but I can change this parameter, this query, to page 1. And that would actually take me to the first page of this report. Now, the tricky part about this scenario is that we didn't know how many pages this report had. And we wanted to find a way to programmatically actually scan the page and basically iterate through all of the possibilities that we had on this page to get all of the data. Now, you're going to notice that this web page has, for example, page 1, which goes from the number 1 to 100 for the box office data of each movie. Then we have from 101 to 200, so forth, all the way to 389. So those are the released films or movies in 2017. Now, the idea is that you can actually also change the domestic year, for example, to 2016, and that would actually give you the information for last year. And this actually had some other information or some other pages that, for example, the 2007 didn't have. So we didn't know. We just didn't know how many pages, and we didn't want to look at the web page or the site and input that data. We just wanted Power Query to do and scan and basically give me all information. So Matt created this pattern or this technique using first a function that will actually retrieve the information from the web page. And as you can see, he used the URL of that web page. The only parameter that he used was the actually page number. So there's that. And then he actually posted this code, which basically creates first a range of pages, so from 1 to 10,000, and he tries to iterate over each one of them. Now, what he showcased and what was really basically new to us is that you were able to do a partially lazy evaluation with Power Query and some list commands. And the idea is that you will iterate over any number of rows until you actually hit an error. So once you actually, or Power Query hits an error, it will actually stop. Now that was the idea. But now if you actually try this on the newest versions of Power Query or Power BI Desktop, as you can see here, so this is the Matt 2014. This is the same code. This is exactly the same function. All I changed was the year to 2017. And over here is the same code that you see on his webpage. You can click on the link in the description below so you can actually visit that blog post. And when you actually try and close and load and actually load this query to a table, for example, or your data model, you're going to be getting a really weird error that is going to tell you that you don't have access to the database, even though it's actually a web page. So there's that. But the main takeaway from the actual blog post from Matt is that you're able to use the partially lazy evaluation to your advantage. Now, there are better ways to actually get all of the data from the box office mojo, and that's what this video is actually about. And about to show you a way where you can actually use Power Query to iterate through any number of pages or any type of pagination and just get all of the data that you actually want, without also one of the caveats that was from using this is that if you actually tried using Fiddler, you'll notice that Power Query was trying to actually evaluate all 10,000 pages. So that was not good, especially because it could actually get you blacklisted or your IP blacklisted in some sites. So I'm going to show you another way that you can get this information and basically do a similar way to a do while in some other programming languages. So basically we're going to be trying to replicate a do while in Power Query. So I'm going to delete this one. So Met 2014. I'm going to create a completely new query from blank. And I'm going to be using the famous list.generate function. Now, this is not the first time that we're actually seeing this function, but it is amazing to actually create values from scratch and to basically create those values based on a logic that you have full control of. So, as we've done in previous videos, what we need to do first is basically use this function nomenclature, which is basically saying that we're going to define a function with no parameters, and then we're going to input the values or the logic that is going to be creating this list. So the first parameter of my function is actually going to be a record, and this record is going to represent the initial value or the initial or the first element of my list. Now, in my case, I actually love the function that Matt created, the get data. So I'm just gonna input that the first value that I need to calculate is actually the get data, and it's actually gonna be for the first page. Now, if the first page is giving me no response, it's actually giving me errors, then I should actually stop right there. Now, I'm gonna wrap this around an if error, which is basically just a try in Power Query. So I'm gonna try to evaluate this. If this is actually giving me an error, instead of actually showing it as an error, give me a no value. So that's it. So if I ever get an error here, it will actually show as a no. So that is my first value, and I also want to have another field on this record. So I'm gonna put also a page field just to actually show that this is the page number for this record. So page number 1, and this is the actual result that we get from this page number 1. So the next parameter of my function, or the next step of my function, is to actually tell Power Query when it's going to be creating new values for this list. So the rest of the fields from row 2 to the ultimate row, the final row of this is the new list, how or under what condition should we actually create those new rows. So here I'm going to tell that in order for me to actually create new rows, I need to satisfy a condition. This condition is going to be the result cannot be no. So this right here is telling me that do basically this result while the result is not equals to null. So, or basically that's what I'm about to write. But basically this is the do while. Do not create new rows when the result is actually equals to null. And this is not only to the first value, but this is for each of the values that we're going to be creating. So this is going to be evaluated for each new row. If the next row that I'm going to be creating gives me a null, then I'm going to stop right there. So that's nice. That's the do while that I was looking for. Now, this is the condition that we need to meet. This is the do while. The next is actually creating each of the rows of the list. So I'm going to input here that I want to have the result. So for every new row, I'm going to create a new record. The first field of that record is going to be a result. And it's basically going to do this exact thing right here. I'm just going to copy paste it, to be honest. And what I'm going to change from this is the 1. So instead of being just 1, I'm going to input this to be the page number plus an increment of 1. So it's always going to get the next page. So it's going to be the previous page, which is 1, plus 1. So it's going to be getting the page number 2. And the other field is basically going to be doing the same. So the page, which is this, plus 1. So let's copy and paste this over here. Now we can close the square brackets because all of this is just one record. Then we can input another comma, and this last parameter, or this last section of this function to create new rows in my list, or the list.generate, is going to be the output. So on every new row, instead of having the whole record, which is the result and the page field, I just want to have the result field. So this output is actually the result. I'm going to close parentheses now. I'm going to hit enter, and you're going to notice that the result is actually 4 tables. When I actually click on each one of them, you're going to notice that rank 1, rank 2, and then we actually have the rank 101, starts from rank 101, rank 201, and then rank 301. Now, that is amazing. Now, what about if we actually change this from 2017 to 2006, or 2016, sorry. Let's just make the change, go back to the query. It's going to try to evaluate again, and I'm going to be getting the response for not just the same amount of pages that we actually got from the 2017, but I'm also going to be getting the response for, I believe it's actually, how many pages? 8 pages. Nice. So we got 8 pages right here. And it's not actually trying to evaluate more pages. It's just going to evaluate up to the 9th. On the 9th page, it's going to find out that it's going to give an error, and it's just going to stop right there. So do while this actually happens. And later, since this is still a list, what you can do is just transform this to a table right here. There we go. And expand all of this data. So let's just go ahead and expand this. There we go. And we can just, so this is going to be Matt 2017, for example. Just going to close and load. And you're going to notice that this time we're not going to be getting any errors. It's just going to load the table or the data to a table in Excel. And running background query, it's trying to actually load the table. We're just going to wait for 1 second. And there we go. So that's the new table. Now, one thing that I forgot to do is actually defining the data types. So you need to do that before loading your data to a table or to anywhere. Just make sure that you always define the data types. And this is how you can actually do a similar way to iterating through multiple unknown or an unknown number of pages, or basically setting up a do while just by doing a list.generate. And this is what the formula looks like. Hope that you actually found this video interesting, and let me know your comments in the comment section below. Thank you.